Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. Hi, Frank. Thank you so much for staying, and I'm sure it's, a big draw outside on the goats, so we also have multi-gen going on, so there's a lot happening today, so I really appreciate everyone who's here. This is, just to make sure you are in the right spot, this is Visioning for Faith Development, and really the third of 4 ministry sessions that we're having to have an open forum for everyone to share their ideas and thoughts about what we want to do to strengthen and grow and transform our own ministries here for the church. This is all part of the shared ministry that we're really trying to encourage here and build here at the church, as we are all stewards of the church and have an active responsibility and opportunity to participate in the direction of the church, engagement, and contribute our time, our talents, and our financial resources. So this is part of stewardship overall, and we will have pledge cards here that we will hand out if you have not had a chance to do your pledge yet for the annual fund for this next coming church year. So the question that we put out to the different ministry groups, and we've had 3 of the presentations during the service, was assume you had the resources. So you had the engaged people to help do the work, and the financial resources to do the vision that you have in mind. What would be your vision for how we would transform the ministry of our faith development ministry over the lifespan for all ages, young and old, over the next 3 years? So this is your chance to say, hey, this is what I think we ought to be doing, this is my idea, and think big. So I'm going to open it up with that as a backdrop and ask for people to either react to what we saw on the video from our youth and adults, or share some ideas of what you think we ought to be doing to transform lives in our lifespan faith development program. Anyone?
Just for clarification, are you just talking Sunday school and evening classes and all that? What does faith development include? Because what's next Sunday?
What's next? Yeah, next Sunday is caring ministry, formerly known as pastoral care. Okay. So this is about our own faith development journeys, how we do that collectively as a congregation and as individuals, spiritual growth, and our own, and the development of our UU identity. So it is those 3 major areas. And, faith development over the lifespan. So it's not just, as we think about RE, for the young people, it is over the lifespan. It is the journey of faith development over your life, and how we do that and help people in that journey as individuals and collectively as a congregation, and spiritual growth and UU identity. So Sue, did you want to?
He already has a mic.
Oh, Frank. Okay.
Hi, I'm Frank Weber. Excuse me. I've been here many decades, unfortunately or fortunately, and I've seen ups and downs, but the one thing I've seen with all the change is that people always step up when there's a need. And my vision, and I know the people will step up, is that we need to have the church building to ourselves to be able to handle our youth and our adults, and it'd be so nice to be able to use our rooms again. So that's my vision.
Your vision, okay. Sue?
A lot of people didn't hear what Frank said.
Oh, Frank, you want to? I think I've been told that you need to hold the mic this way to make sure it's
Testing. Hi, I'm Frank Weber. I've been here a long time. I've seen up and downs, and I've seen the congregation rise to the occasion when there's a need. And I believe with the visioning that I see is that we get our whole building back. We use all the rooms for classrooms, for adult RE, for outside groups, and I just love to have our building again. And I think that we need to do that even though there's a long-term contract that means a financial, bump from our congregation to be able to do it. That's my vision.
Thank you, Frank. Sue?
Yeah, Sue Compton. When I think of faith development, I would love to see our church be able to have a pathway for adults like we do for kids. We have a progression of education over the course of the youth, but we do not offer something like that for adults. And I think often about how looking at our principles and how can we tie our principles to our own lives, where are we putting them into play, how are we doing that as an entire congregation, and taking the time to sort of map that out for people so that we are truly living into our faith as you use.
Marilee was next here.
I'm Marley Singh,
Marlee, I'm sorry.
and I would like to add two things to what you just said, because I totally agree. When you started talking about the principles, what that brought to my mind is that we voted to accept the 8th principle, for instance. And since that vote, I don't think we've mentioned that again. And so exploring what it means to us and what we can do about it, that would be one thing, part of the thing. The other thing about what the children do, the program they have, I was an RE teacher long ago, and the thing we all loved best was exploring our neighboring faiths. And something like that for adults would be phenomenal.
Eileen?
I'm Eileen Andrews. I just want to follow up what you said about the other neighboring faiths. I taught almost all the curriculums about a decade ago, and there were two in particular that I thought really would lend themselves to intergenerational participation. One was holidays and holy days, and the other one was neighboring faiths. And everybody, all the teachers loved visiting the other denominations and talking about it and meeting others and sharing. And I think there's a great opportunity there to get people involved intergenerationally.
Irene?
One of the things that I would be interested in is I think we need to have a chair and a co-chair and do better job with transitioning, because every time a new person, sometimes they're doing a great job, so they get it for as long as they want it. So I would encourage with every committee in the church that we have a chair and a co-chair, and we plan for transitions. Another thing that I'm aware of is that the UUA in Boston used to develop content for programs. And some of those programs were very, very influential. For me, creating your own theology, and I happen to have that leader guide in my possession. I need to know who to give it to. I also have the leader guide for Cakes for the Queen of Heaven, which I've just discovered with my downsizing. We need to have a place for these items, and we need to make sure that other people can tap them. They can take parts of them, or that we use them. And I would like to encourage what is UU in Boston doing in developing new curriculum or sharing curriculums, because many times we just reinvent the wheel. And I think there are many people that I'm sitting here, and I know they've also been chair of Adult RE. I was for many years, and many of you have been. I think that when you finish your tenure, that we should be required to write up, this is what worked, this didn't, so we don't keep making some of the same mistakes. I know that it's a different time and place, but I think there's a lot to be gained when we record what has been done and what could be done.
Craig, go ahead.
Craig Farr. Now that we're on the adult ed, I would like to talk something about, I've been thinking over the years that we don't talk too much about people in our traditions. I mean, you know, when you're exploring the church, you go through an hour discussion of some of the history. But I think re-emphasizing a few of those points, but even new things that we don't know about, and exploring famous people along the way and what their passions were that became our passions.
Good suggestion. Rod?
Hi, I'm Roderick Wolfson. I'm here because what's really important to me is how valuable it is to raise children in this tradition and to support the parents in terms of how do you provide a moral education. And I think I just want to lift up the challenge of that is how things have changed in terms of time, that children don't come every Sunday for a semester. Parents are really stretched very thin, and it's hard to teach when you have only a fraction of the class comes every Sunday. So I lift that up as a dilemma, and yet supporting the children and their parents is so important.
Mm-hmm. Betsy here. Thanks, Beth.
Thank you, Beth. Just to sort of add to what Roderick said, I was heartened this morning to see some of our youth wearing name tags. I'd like to see all of our kids with name tags. I think it sends a message to them that they're welcome here, and a message to their parents that they are welcome here. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Linda?
Yes. Linda Farr. I have, I guess, maybe it's a question I'll start with and then some comments. I am not sure where small group ministry fits. It seems like it has always been here, but I don't know. Our small group is floundering, and it is from loss of members, and we don't seem to get an infusion. I don't know if other small groups are in that dilemma. And it seems like it should be part of our shared ministry. I don't feel like there is a connection of the small groups with the larger congregation. And I would like to see that happen in some way. I'm not quite sure how, but if anyone else has any comments on those lines, I'd love to hear about them.
Can I just do a quick follow-up on
Yeah.
what I said about, what I said was looking for historical and other aspects of our tradition. But the one thing I wanted to say that's kind of out of the box is we should have a budget for that. We don't have to look internally. We tend to always look internally for these courses. And I think we should envision bringing people in to talk to us because we don't always have the resources for what we might want.
Mm-hmm. Rich? Just
going back to adult faith development for a minute. I've taken adult faith courses here, and they've been fine. But the way I've really been transformed by the church is being asked to acquire a new skill to do something. When I started being a part of leadership, I had to learn how to speak in front of a group, something I couldn't do before. When I volunteered to do 8th grade OWL, I was pretty skeptical that this was even possible. It turned out to be a life-transforming experience. It's gone on in many ways, and I think that focusing on, whenever we ask people to do things, making sure there's a coach, there's some kind of explicit equipping of people to have the right skills to acquire them is a really big way to transform people's experience.
Sue Compton again, tagging on to what you're saying, Rich, the opportunity to, I spoke earlier about finding ways to put our faith into action. So within this community, finding roles to serve, and yes, very, very helpful to have somebody to teach you how to do that, because often I can only speak for myself, I would hesitate to step into the role for fear of not knowing how to do it well. So there's that. And then around small group, I mean, my small group I've been a part of since I walked through the doors of this church. I joined it very quickly. And I have, for my own spiritual exploration, I find that a very rich experience. So I would absolutely hold up that supporting that ministry of the church. And I think it does fall under faith development, but it's one of the ones that crosses over all the other ones, which we've talked about in the other sessions, the importance of integrating all our efforts so that they're not siloed.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of caring that takes place through the SGM, and I think it's, from what I've heard, has been one of the reasons people don't want to leave their group, is feel safe. But because of that, you do create this isolation at the same time. So, in that context. So we're sort of bouncing around. There's sort of the demographic split between a faith development program for younger kids. Then there's sort of youth. Then there's adults, and then we've talked about SGM a little bit. Let's kind of go through each of them a little bit more to see what people might have comments on. Let's talk about the RE, young kids programs. Are there thoughts about, ideas about how you would envision what's possible to do that program? OWL is one of them programs that draws families in to this church. Are there other programs and Neighboring Faith, I've heard this morning, but others? Frank?
My 3 children were raised in the RE program here. And what I remember was the sessions. There were like 2 sessions and a winter break, opportunity at a winter break to learn new things. But the sessions were by grade level, and they were appropriate. We now have all our grades together, or many of them together. They don't have that kind of structure that I thought was very useful for our children.
Mm-hmm. Irene? Sorry. Yeah.
One of the things I've experienced is the 30 to 50 generation basically is, I'm only speaking from personal experience, they're so busy, they're working 24/7, and they don't come to church, because if they got Sunday off, they're going to not come. So I thought, okay, now how do we reinforce? So I thought, and always gave our kids, you can go to church or not. And well, a lot of times they chose not to because they'd been out Saturday night and didn't want to get up early Sunday morning. So I thought, now I'm going to take a whack at the second generation. So in doing that, I take my grandkids to Star Island every summer. It reinforces everything that I would like them to do, and their parents, of course, are involved, because if they're underage, they have to come too. And that has been a tremendous asset. So I think the opportunity, and I also, this is a personal feeling, that we've raised an entitled generation, and I so much in favor of experiential education. Had the opportunity to go on a service trip to Haiti. I took my granddaughter with me, and what a difference it's made in her whole life. So as much experiential, and I think we should repeat things like Eastern State Penitentiary has an opportunity to go there, and you go in, and it's I call it experiential. So it says, how likely are you to be arrested? And you put in your zip code, and then you do this and do that, and by the time you finish, you think, oh my gosh, a tremendous experience, hands-on, and it's every Tuesday night. Not every Tuesday night, the third Tuesday. I'm not sure what the schedule is right now. The third Tuesday, but had tried that. Also went to Alcatraz to see what they did as compared to what we did here. We did a much better job in Philadelphia at our Eastern State. So the opportunity for hands-on experience is invaluable. Mm-hmm. And whether it be, I'm sorry, I'm filibustering. But the more we can do that, the better.
Mm-hmm. So experiential learning, hands-on, here at the church. I mean, I think that's what earlier Rich was talking about is, and ways to get young people in service here at the church.
So I heard what Frank said about grade level. I think one of the challenges that we face now is the inconsistent attendance. So having sort of a workshop format for the younger grades that allows for things to build but also be experienced as a one-off, so that kids don't feel isolated if they weren't able to come the week before. They can still have a valuable experience the next week.
Mm-hmm. Oops.
Sort of echoing what I've heard already, I would really like to see kids involved in church service projects. I think there are a lot of ways they can contribute to this community and made to have a personal and spiritual investment here. I'm sure all of us could come up with lots of things that could be done one morning a week, a couple consecutive Sundays, but it would be a way, I think, for kids to become actively involved in what we do here.
Ellen?
I think it would be great if we had intergenerational storytelling.
Can you say that again?
I think it would be great if we had intergenerational storytelling. I just picture, like my kids went to Quaker schools and people from the retirement community next door, they could be 100 years old and they come over and tell stories, and the children learned to tell their stories too.
Mm-hmm. Carrie, I think, was next, and then we'll...
While we're imagining things we could have in the future, I'm thinking about all the churches, including the Methodist church I grew up in, that have a vacation Bible school. I think it would be really cool to have a summer program 1 week for kids that we could invite neighbors and classmates to come to. We don't evangelize, we're UUs, don't worry. And I think the summer might be a time when we could have a more concentrated period of time with kids.
Mm-hmm. Hi, my name is Amanda, and you're all very good public speakers, so bear with me. I have only been coming to this church for a few months, but I did grow up in the UU church, so I'm still getting my mind around and understanding what actually is already happening, so I don't feel in a position to really offer a vision, but since I hear it coming up, I'm a 45-year-old woman with 4 children, so I can tell you why I decided to come to church. It might help inform what we're talking about in the RE section. So as I said, I grew up in the UU church, and it was very, I don't know, it's hard for me to separate who I am as a person and how I live in the world as a person from that upbringing. And as my kids were getting older, I realized I need help. I don't know how to raise them, or I do know how, I think, but I can't on my own, or even with my wonderful husband, we can't give them everything. And church was where I got a lot of my principles and a lot of my view of the world and my understanding of the world. And when I showed up at college, I was a little surprised how much my peers who were 18, 19 years old, how little sex ed they had received in their life. And I had frankly taken for granted that, didn't you learn that at church? Like, and and I remember going as a kid in the 90s to, like, as a teenager, to Washington, D.C. For protests and for rallies with with other families in my church. Like, my idea of like what church ladies did was they went and they protested in Washington, D.C. And that is what I want for my kids, that sort of civic engagement, education, and I had people in my life, adults in my life, who were not my parents, who I could turn to. I grew up in Massachusetts. It was not as large of a church as this, but it was a very active church. But to someone's point earlier, there weren't always enough kids of every age to have a class. But at some point when I was a teenager, someone stepped up to do the coming of age program, and there were only two of us who always came and a third person. And this woman, Diane Grant, led this group for us, and she had younger kids, so I think it was a nice break for her to hang out with teenagers. And we had, I can still remember what I wore for my coming of age ceremony. And originally we had, and I don't know if you all still do this, but this was like so meaningful to me. We had I'm sorry, I'm rambling, but I want you to know I'm going somewhere. So we had this ceremony where everyone was given, the kids, at some point we were given roses with all the thorns cut off, and that was because the church was going to protect us. And then when we graduated from high school, we were given another dozen roses with the thorns still on them, with a pair of gardening gloves. And it really, like, I really felt like, well, yeah, they did set me up. And it really, I still have those, my friends might have like things from like rosary beads. I have gardening gloves from 1997. So those memories and those rituals really, really are part of who I am. And that's what I'm hoping to have for my kids. And then just lastly, as people are, we are also busy, everybody of every age these days. So it's been helpful to me when the kids are, like one of my kids did was it 6 weeks owl program. So I knew I was prioritizing, at least some of us have to be here all of those 6 weeks, or when there was another one. And not to say that we don't wish we could come every Sunday, but being able to orient around certain workshops or seminars helps us prioritize our time. And I love the idea of something over the summer, because I send my kids to a vacation Bible school that only because it's available to me as childcare in the summer. So I'd rather it be something that aligned with my values. So thank you for bearing with me while I took a really long time.
Thank you, Amanda. That's great. Thank you so much. Carol?
My vision is to hear more from the youth and the children. And as a congregation, we support them in their idea, their vision, their social action project that they want to do, or their music night or whatever. And so while yes, I think we as the adults can have a social action day or a project, and the youth can join us, it would be nice to have at least one opportunity where the youth actually get to tell us what's important to them and we can support them.
Thank you, Carol. Holly.
Yeah, I love the networking, trying to get the people who are teaching classes and even maybe people who are going to the adult RE type classes to get together, to have a little get together once a year or twice a year so you can share ideas. Wouldn't it be great for the teachers? Maybe they do it already, but to all get together and say what your different experiences were share notes and ideas. I'd love to see that happen. Even people who take classes, maybe, to have a couple of classes that are sort of aligned and say, hey, we're going to have a potluck, and so you can talk about the classes, what it meant to you, that kind of thing. I think it would help bond people in the church, and I think that's really important to have those opportunities. Thanks.
I like what I've heard. I do like the idea of mingling with the youth and what they've learned and with the adults, because we just see them in the hall sometimes, unless we're involved in the RE education. I want to ask the youth, 16-year-olds, what are they doing now? Do they meet at night? Is there a youth group? I hate to be ignorant of this. Yes?
Henry's good. Yeah, let's. I was about to say, let's have Henry give us what he's heard from the youth.
Hi, everyone. I'm Henry Zink. I'm the Youth Ministry Coordinator here at MLUC. And so we have a very small but enthusiastic youth group. They're splitting their time right now between me and the OWL program. So for the last couple weeks, they've been downstairs during the services learning about all kinds of very interesting things. But when they're not doing that, they're upstairs during the service. After the time for all ages, so around the time that all the rest of the children and youth leave. And what I'm trying to do is get to know them and what they're passionate about. I have heard from many members of the congregation about ideas that they have for what the youth could do to help the church. What I want to find out is what makes the youth tick, what they're passionate about, and what they want to do. So it's a slow process because frankly there just aren't a ton of them. And I grew up here. When I was here, there was a junior youth group, a senior youth group, there was youth groups out the wazoo, and I envision one day, hopefully, so my vision is that we get back to a point where we have the continuity available within youth programming. They are not only meeting routinely, but they're taking on projects that they're passionate about, and most importantly, for me, that they feel like they're members, and that they feel like they belong here, and that they feel like they're involved in a way that's meaningful to them, however that may look. And I'm happy to take any additional questions about youth.
Henry, how many are in that youth group, and is it mostly meeting on Sunday mornings?
Yeah, it's mostly meeting on Sunday mornings, and a part of the reasoning for that is that when I was coming up, the youth met on Sunday nights, and frankly, I don't think they knew that there was other people here, and I don't think the congregants knew that the youth were here, and we just sort of passed in the night. So we've been meeting after the time for all ages, upstairs in the beanbag room. If you haven't seen the beanbag room, I recommend it. It's full of beanbags. And so we meet during the Sunday services.
And how many are involved?
Oh yeah, depending on the week, we have a longer list than we have routine attendance, because I understand that it's a challenge. We have about a half a dozen regular attendees every week, and it sort of cycles in and out, but there are at least 5 or 6 people that I can count on, unless there's a swimming tournament or a rowing match or something, then we have to adjust. But otherwise, it's about a half a dozen people most of the time.
And what are their ages?
They are mostly 8th and 9th grade right now. So they're people that have either completed or will complete the coming of age curriculum. And then they're also involved in the OWL program, as I mentioned. But I'm hoping that as we continue, as these 8th and 9th graders get older and we take in the new 8th and 9th graders, we'll start to create a cycling system in which we have a wider range of ages. I'd like to get youth up to grades 11 and 12. It's just a little bit harder to sort of rope them back in, especially as we recover from, the events of a few years ago and everything like that.
So one of the things, I was very active in running the youth group for quite a number of years, and so many of them built those tight connections, which brings them to church because they had been in camps up, Unirondack together and had built those, connections, those deep relationships, so they couldn't wait to get together and be together. Given the fact that schedules are even more challenging for youth to come to church on Sunday, what do you guys think about, I don't know if any of the current youth are intending to go to any of the UU camps, things like that, because it's a great way to also connect with other youth with similar outlooks and questions. So I didn't know if any of them were.
Yeah, I can't speak to their summer plans other than that I understand that they are very busy over the summers. What I can say is that I hear a lot of discussion about how we need to sort of get people to come, and I see as my job that it starts with creating a program that makes them want to come. I heard an anecdote from one family that they were thinking, they woke up on Sunday morning and they were thinking, it's a little rainy out there. I might want to just watch Zoom Zoom church today. And their kids who were in my youth group said, no, we have to go. You know, it's Exploding Kittens Day at youth group or something. I forget what we were doing. It's a card game. We weren't doing anything bad. Caroline was there. She was concerned. But so I know that if we continue to create a program that makes the students, the youth feel like they belong and feel connected, I think that those other things, they will be more inclined to go to camps and go to cons. And so the other part is just getting our point back on the map. And if anyone wants to create connections with youth, we always need a second adult at youth group, and we only have 2 people that routinely come, and they've been really good. But if you're interested, it's henry@mluc.org, henry@mluc.org. Shoot me an email. We'd love to have you. Yeah.
We're recording it, so for others who think, Holly, so helpful if you could use the mic.
Just had a question for Henry, responding about the LGBTQ plus youth, if there was a need, if that's going on here, et cetera, if you could enlighten.
I'm not sure what exactly, do you mean, like, do we have LGBTQ youth? Or, I don't think I'm in a position to share that information. I'm going to say that we haven't discussed on a personal level, in a personal way, because that's private information.
So the youth have not expressed a need. The reason I ask is that Central Baptist Church has a very good, thriving youth LGBT group.
I would imagine that as we increase in size, and we might then have the potential to create affinity groups that would relate to those issues and needs. But at the time, it's such a small group that I don't think we have a large population. And
It hasn't been presented then, but I just want you to know I have some contacts if you need it.
Thank you.
Okay, Irene, we'll come back to you. Let's let. Okay, we'll go here and then there's a couple. Yeah, thank you.
Hi.
Diane.
I'm Diane, and much of what I was going to say has probably just been said here, but my daughter grew up in the church, and it was a wonderful place for her. She had some special needs, and this place was very welcoming for her and gave her a place of belonging. Fortunately, it was also during the years when we had lots of kids. And I just want to underscore that in addition to all the moral education and so forth, fun is just a really big part, and part of what brings kids here. And probably one of the things that she remembers most are the cons, which I don't know whether they're still doing them or not, but where kids from churches in a fairly wide regional area would come together for an overnight experience and meet other kids who shared some of the peculiarities that you kids tend to have, and they would meet other kids. Well, we're fortunate because we're in an area here where there actually are several UU churches, and I imagine most of them are facing the same dilemma that we are of not having a real critical mass for our youth population, so that if there are fun activities, service projects, and so forth, where we could involve other youth from other nearby UU churches, we might want to try to do that. I believe that's been tried with OWL in the past. I don't know how successful it was, but this kind of thing sort of widens the base and makes it more attractive to the kids.
I think Joanne wanted to add a little comment, so do you want to share that now, and then we'll come to you, Christy.
Mine is going in a different direction, so if it's on this thing right now, who wanted to speak? Okay,
Yeah.
I'm just going to do it. So I'm switching to adults here. And as far as religious education goes, I also find that the sermons, when I come to service, that's one of the, this may not be on the topic, but we're talking about religious education. And I get inspired by the sermons, I learn, I get fired up, I get also comfort. So I wanted to mention that as, I think, part of religious education, coming to the service, seeing it all, and then hearing the reverends or whoever the speaker is, their talk.
Thank you, Joanne. Irene.
I was talking about future plans. I wonder what we're doing with transitioning youth. In my family, we have 3 youth who are transitioning. That requires special needs and special understandings. And I'd like to be in the forefront of looking at what's happening. I get so confused. I try to be politically correct, and I don't know if it's we, them, or those. And it is an issue of this time which none of us faced before, and I think we need to be thinking about it. I'd like to be in the leadership position of that. Another concern I have is the service projects. We used to have UUY 2000, and there were many service projects that sprung from that. Adopt a Highway, Petals for Progress, Habitat for Humanity. We had dozens of kinds of programs like that. Whether that would still be of interest, I don't know. It's the experience, I think, what Diane said. The cons were there. The kids came because their friends were here and they wanted to be with them. Now, I don't know if we could think about, I know they've done a better job with our different camps, whether it's Unirondeck or whether it's Star Island or Ferry Beach. So instead of sending our kids to some other camp that doesn't reflect our values, we can do some more cooperating. And they have done a much better job with, you know, like you might call and say, I want to go to Star Island. And they say, sorry, we're full for this work, but have you tried Unirondeck? Or that, I'm pleased to see, is much better cooperation. Anyway, but let's look at what these youth are facing and what we can do to help them with Get Out the Vote is another thought.
Christy's been waiting, so let's get to Christy.
Kid-wise, I would look at the best practices and protocols of Young Life, which somehow my daughter got involved in when she was in high school. I'm not sure anyway, they seem very effective. She would print out little notices at school and hand them out to 20 friends, and they would be 50 or 60 people at somebody's house on a Wednesday night. Just seemed really effective. From an adult perspective, I've always been curious. My search for truth and meaning took me to another church for a few years, and I thought, well, what if we would share with other churches, not just visiting on Sunday, but offer some of the classes? Like they could come to our classes, we could go to their classes. That may have been a way that would keep me here, would have kept me here, and still enabled me to learn, you know, what I was wanting to learn at the time.
Other thoughts? Carolyn?
I just want to clarify a point that when it comes to talking about youth who are LGBTQIA+, as one of the co-chairs of the UU Justice PA LGBTQIA+ committee, I would just like to point out that in OWL curriculums and a lot of the work that happens here and in broader UU world, It used to be that the assumption was you're straight until you come out as anything else. I would say that is the reverse now among young people. The assumption is you are not necessarily straight until you come out as straight. And because it's understood differently and as a spectrum, I just wanted to be very clear that it's not necessarily something that we have to have a separate thing for. It's so thoroughly integrated into every single thing that is happening with youth especially, that's just an important point of clarification. So it's not being excluded, it's just so aggressively included.
We have one person in the back. Thank you, David.
I'm Pamela Webb. I think the most siloed group in Unitarian churches across the nation is the older youth. And I grew up in a Baptist church, and we did it very different. We were integrated into the Sunday morning service, at least by junior high. And here we don't do that. Well, Unitarians don't seem to do that. And what I've seen is it seems to be that the youth can be very involved in a Unitarian church, graduate from high school, go off to college, and nobody sees them again until they're married and have children. And personally, I don't understand why the youth, at least from, say, 8th or 9th grade, aren't integrated into the morning service and feel a part of that main part of the church and hear the adult sermons from a good minister, such as we have now, full of our values. This sermon this morning with those UU values would have been wonderful for junior high and high school youth to hear. And then Henry can meet some other time with the youth and do the wonderful things I'm sure he's doing. They can have the fun and the social projects and Henry and Carolyn and such, but I think from my varied experience, going from Baptist to Pentecostal to Unitarian, is I don't see it really working for the UUA and individual churches as a whole, not integrating older youth into our adult services.
Back when I taught coming of age, we had a meeting at the end around the coming of age service where we talked to each of the coming of age youth about what their volunteering was going to be now that they've finished. So I don't know if that's still being done, but that's good for people to know about. We have all these great options. Do you want to be a greeter? Do you want to be an usher? Do you want to work at the AV team? And we had the students sign up as part of their coming of age process. It wasn't required, but we kind of made it seem like it's the next step. And so a bunch of them did get involved in those kinds of roles around the church.
Craig?
Just thinking about an observation I had about a year after I left the board. I was looking around and realized how many people in the previous 5 years, say, had been on the board and I never see them again. And I started thinking about that, and I thought most of them, it's because their kids have aged out. And so my question is, what do we have for the 40 to 55-year-olds to keep them interested, to keep them engaged when their primary engagement was through their kids before?
Diane?
What Craig is saying is absolutely true. One of the things, two things, to Sue's earlier point about a path for adult faith development, I don't know how long ago it was, 20 years maybe, we had a very elaborate setup and there were categories of spiritual development and which classes spoke to which category and so forth. It's out there somewhere. I don't know whether it still exists in a retrievable form or not. But the other thing that we did once upon a time, that we actually had participation in the service occasionally by members of the congregation doing something called a search for meaning, where they would stand up and talk about something in their lives that had spoke to their spiritual development and created meaning for them. And I always thought it was a very powerful thing, not just for the person who was doing it, but for the congregation as well, and that people would speak to you afterwards and so forth, and created connections. Something like that might be worth considering again in the future.
Mm-hmm. Claudia?
Joy, thank you. Hi, I'm Claudia Gard. An observation. Our small group uses the Soul Matters for at least one of its readings each month. And in one of the month's readings, I believe it was February, it came that Matthew Desmond was mentioned several times, as was his book, Poverty by America. Coincidentally, we found that he was speaking in the speaker series at Bremer Press. A number of us went, and we found that his presentation was really eye-opening and important. Now, the idea came also by someone who was there, and I don't recall who, but they said, why can't we do that here? And the idea being that something like that would draw folks not just from the congregation, not just our older youth, which it certainly could, but also people from the community. It was certainly well attended there. And it's only done, I believe they do it 2 or 3 times a year. But the idea being that could something like that be really important to us too? Again, it was directly out of our Soul Matters, as it so happened, but could we not have something like that that would also be a wonderful piece for our own people, but also for other people in the community and afar? Thank you.
So that's tying things together so that the program is interconnected in multiple ways to bring people. And I think that's what I'm hearing is there are multiple ways. It's just not one way, multiple ways that people are going to connect with the programs and ministries that we offer. Chrissy, you have one more comment?
It could be cool to have, like, people share their transformation moments. Like, I'm thinking if it were my new Juice Plus business 10 years ago and I had to learn how to get through 10 people saying no before somebody said yes, and learning that it wasn't about me, for example, that's, or when I read the book, The 4 Agreements, and we're not supposed to take things personally, how I might have put that into practice.
Take 1 or 2 more, and then I think we're going to wrap just from a time standpoint. Diane?
I found maybe 4 or 5 laundry basket-sized piles of things in my house that go all the way back to maybe the late 80s to the early 2000s. And a lot of the stuff we're talking about is in there. And what struck me is I went through this different services for the evening service and the list, because we had people sign in. And most of those people are gone, but they were mostly younger people. Maybe that 5 o'clock time was better and having a potluck. And for some of us, it was also the time of youth group. So our kids could go there. But it's just a thought, because I realized, wow, they're not here, but they were, at that time, younger people. So it's just a thought. And I'll bring a lot of this stuff in, because I think I have the pathway to spiritual development somewhere in there.
One more comment? Any additional last-minute ones? John?
I'm John McCormick. I'd like to speak to adult RE because we've been spending most of this time on the kids' issues. Adult RE is, I believe, very, very important. We used to have a brochure in this church every year outlining all the different RE classes that were going to be offered in the year, their focus, their subject, their topic, who was teaching them. Another factor was many of our RE programs were actually done by members of the congregation. And we have a huge depth of people in this congregation that unless they're asked to speak up or do something, they're not going to do that. My first experience with transgender issues happened to be here at this church, because we had a member of this church who was a counselor for that type of patient. And she brought her patients to this church, and we had an RE session for adults after the congregation. And then some of the people in this room were there, and it was fantastic. It was very, very informative. And she brought people in that she was counseling, ranging from a student at Westchester University to a corporate individual who had transitioned that way, his way. And doing that here in this church, we are offering ourselves to the community as a diverse population with these kinds of different folks. And in all the years I've been coming here, we seem to not want to talk about these issues as a group and have a conversation and have an RE class. And the other issue is we had some folks in this church who used to be Iranians, husband and wife. They taught at the University of Pennsylvania. And they did the same thing. After church on Sunday, now we're talking about huge attendance in here after church, discussing openly the Iranian issue from all different perspectives and giving us a flavor for what, in their opinion, maybe, what was going on worldwide. I'll shut up. One last thing, we used to have other classes, world affair related issues to subjects the Unitarians are facing in our culture. That's organized RE class program, month after month, week and so forth, done in a church setting. We don't do that here anymore, at least in the past 5 years. I'd like to just
Thanks, John.
end with that.
Yep. We just got some youth in the room, but they're eating, so. I think that it's about 12:35. I thank you all for sharing a lot of your thoughts, ideas about, I know we've kind of bounced around there. We're between the youth, the adult, and the kids, but I think some good ideas were shared, so I thank you. As we are doing with all of the sessions, we're integrating the feedback from music and social justice, faith development, and next Sunday is the caring ministry, formerly known as pastoral care. I hope you'll all come back and encourage others to come. And one final thing is that all of this visioning is going to be integrated. The board's going to be looking at it all and developing plans for next year, and those plans are all going to be dependent on the funding that we raise through the commitments we've raised through the pledge campaign this spring. So if you haven't pledged, it really is important for us to hear and get your pledges during the drive this March. It's the basis for our building the budgets for next year. So if you're thinking about waiting to pledge at a later date, please don't. Please pledge so we can have the information and be informed to make the right decisions about the budget. So thank you again for coming. Marlise will see you. She has all of the cards, as does Carol. Thank you so much, and have a good Sunday.